Hello, everyone. Hopefully you can see and hear me. Oh, there's Lise.
Hi, Dan. We can
Hello.
hear you. Yeah. And if some of the students can confirm that as well.
Can anyone
Can you guys see Di or myself?
Thank you, Renee.
Okay, thanks, Lise.
Okay. Do you want to speak first, Lise, or?
No, I think it's all good. I think majority of you are aware now that Dr. Diana Turpin has started with her lectures. So as I briefly alluded on that in my last lecture, so that Diana is providing the poultry and the pig lectures to you, and is obviously therefore also going to lead the poultry and the pig workshops. So I'll be online as well to provide a little bit of help here and there where I can, but Di will be leading those workshops. So off to you, Di. Yeah, all good.
Okay, thanks, Lise. Hello, everyone. If you haven't seen the first two lecture recordings, I'll just reintroduce myself again. So I'm Diana. I'm a veterinarian, and I also work in research, and I predominantly work in pig research. I did work part-time for Poultry Veterinary Services, so obviously have experience in dealing with pigs and poultry in terms of their veterinary care, but also their production. So that's just a little bit about me. I did used to work in small animal practice, but I saw the light and figured out that pigs and poultry were the way to go. So welcome to the poultry workshop, which is called the Poultry Industry Explained. Obviously, this is a very different format to what we've done in previous years. I was on maternity leave last year, so this experience of doing lectures online is very new to me. So please be patient with me, and hopefully everything goes smoothly this afternoon. Now, there's obviously a quiz associated with this workshop, which is worth 2.5%, and it's open after the workshop up until Thursday, 6th of May at 1:30. I strongly recommend you wait until you hear the third lecture before doing the quiz, because the material that's covered in the quiz is what we do here in the workshop, but also there's a bit of what's covered in lectures as well. I also recommend you listen to the lectures rather than just reading the lectures, because I've got a bit of a reputation of not putting a lot of words in my lectures, and I like to spend a bit of time explaining things. So I would make sure you listen to them as well. So with that out of the way, I guess we're going to try our first exercise, which is where we do our virtual polling. So what we need you guys to do is either go to the Mentimeter website or have the app ready in your phone. I'm going to share my screen, which is going to come up with a presentation. At the top of the presentation, there's a number that you need to type in when you open the app or open the website, and then that should give you the opportunity to answer the questions. Now, I was stingy and I didn't pay the full membership fee for this virtual polling program, so we do 3 questions, and then I have to change the presentation on the screen, and a new number comes up. So it's a little bit clunky, but it should work. Okay, so here we go.
For those who haven't seen it in the notes, I will post the website on the chat box right now.
Okay, so hopefully you should be able to see the presentation, and the code there is 77167147, and we'll see if people show up. Okay, good job. So one person has successfully done it. 4, great. Okay, so this is, I guess, just to see if this small group of us reflects what the pattern is in Australia. And for those of you who've seen the lecture yesterday, you would know that the order in terms of popularity of proteins is chicken, pork, then beef, although pork and beef are very close, and then lamb, although it seems like pork is the least popular in this group. Okay, so we'll move on to the next question. Oh, still answering. Maybe I'll give it a few more seconds. Obviously, we can see that chicken is extremely popular, probably because of the cost, I would say. Okay, I'll move on to the next one, which is what type of chicken meat do you buy? So we discussed yesterday the different production systems. We have indoor raised, which is in the sheds, free range, and certified organic. So in terms of the free range, it's about 20% of the market, but obviously that seems to be a different pattern with you guys. So there's an opportunity to put comments in the next couple of slides, but it would be interesting to find out if you guys knew that the birds don't go outside until they're fully feathered, and that's quite close to harvesting age as well. Okay, we'll move on to the next one. What type of eggs do you buy? So hopefully from the lecture, you know the main production systems are cage, barn raised, free range, and then we have specialty eggs, which are eggs like pasture raised or organic. And once again, yep, free range seems to be dominating. And once again, it'll be interesting to hear why no one buys barn raised. Okay, so that ends that presentation. So I just have to stop sharing. And then I go back here and then I choose to share again. And then I put that in present. Okay, so the code will be coming up now. So there's the code 26608187. So this is an opportunity for you guys to comment. The comments are anonymous, but saying that, obviously we want to be respectful of each other, but of course everyone's entitled to share their opinion. So what is important to you when you buy chicken meat? Yep, cruelty-free. Preferably free range, RSPCA approved, yep. Yep, cheapest. Good quality product, price is important. Yep, understandable, you guys are students. Quality, color, fat content and price, okay. Size and price, cost, hormones used. Okay, that's an interesting comment. So it's actually a myth that hormones are used in chickens. They haven't been for decades. So in terms of what, because I guess everyone's very suspicious, chickens have become very muscular birds, very efficient at growing. But really, that's because of our selective breeding, which we discussed during the lecture yesterday. Also, we're able to control their temperature down to a T, and even more so if they're just indoor raised. So really, we can set an environment where the birds have no stress on them. And also the nutrition. We know every single amino acid those birds need at every stage of life. We know every vitamin, mineral, etc. that they need, so we can really refine their nutrition as well. So that, I guess that's why the birds are so efficient at growing so quickly. Isn't close to the expiry date. Yep, cruelty-free, cheapest. Yep. Okay. Let's move on to what is important to you when you buy eggs. Free range, cheap, yeah. Price and size, yep. Size is very important. Yep, so barn raised is second if can't find free range. No damage to the eggs, yep. Large eggs, yep. Expiry date, yep. Fair enough. Cruelty-free. I guess a few people have said cruelty-free. How do you guys sort of satisfy that, I guess, that requirement? Is it what you see on the packaging, or is it being very selective with your production system, or how do you satisfy knowing that it's cruelty-free? Oh, someone's just commented. Packaging, labels, and research. Yep. Cool. Okay. Let's. Uh-oh. What have I done? That might be the last one. Oh no. When buying chicken meat, I'll get you to rank these different categories. So I always read and understand the label. So I guess this is, the moving on from that question in terms of being able to satisfy yourselves knowing that it's cruelty-free. One way of doing that is knowing the accreditation systems that the production systems go by and what their standards are, and having a good understanding of the different housing systems and if that meets your values. So here we have, I always read and understand the label. So most people seem comfortable with that. Accreditation stickers are important for me. I always look up the standards of the accreditation labels that I buy. Yep, maybe about half. I have a good understanding of the different housing systems. Hopefully after the lectures you do. And I have a good understanding of the different accreditation systems. Yeah. Okay, so we're sort of sitting around 50% for most of them, except for having a good understanding of the housing systems. Okay, so we're going to just stop sharing that, and then we'll go into the next one. Share. Okay, so the similar comments, but it's applying to eggs. New code is 5649326. Okay. So seems like most people are happy with the label and good understanding of the different housing systems. Not many people picking up the standards and not many people knowing the difference between the accreditation systems. I guess there's probably not as many for eggs. The main one would be the Eggs Australia label. Yeah. Okay. Cool. So next one is before ANS 101 and ANS 230, where did most of your information on the poultry industries come from? Friends and family. Yep. So our options are the internet, social media, farm experience, newspaper, other university courses, and documentaries. Seems like only one person's prepared to answer that question. I don't know if there's a glitch or something going on. Oh, yep, there's a comment. I'll just have a look. Oh, my answer isn't coming up. Okay. Oh, okay, now it's coming up now. There's a bit of a...
Maybe it takes a bit of time.
Yeah. Cool. So documentaries, news, other programs. Yep. And the internet. Yep. Social media. Oh, not as much as I thought would be. And then farm experience. That's good that you guys have been, or a few of you have been out onto poultry farms. Okay. And I know we're only sort of halfway through the lectures. Well, 3/4 of the way. But maybe just to get a feeling of where you guys are at with your knowledge. Yep, that's pretty good. Around, well, nearly 70%. That's a distinction, isn't it? Okay. Very good. Now, in the interest of time, we might just stop there because obviously I haven't tried this out with students before, but we need to cover everything. So I'm going to stop sharing that one and you'll come back to me. And what we're going to do now is I'm going to show you a video of a broiler farm. So in previous years, we've had producers, one from the broiler industry, one from the egg industry, come in and speak with you guys. So obviously that's not possible. So we're going to take you to a broiler farm via video. While you're watching the video, as I've said in the prac notes, just look at the setup on the farm, and we're going to be discussing biosecurity risks for that farm. So here we go. I'm going to share this page.
My name's Susan and this is my husband Andy, and we are chicken farmers. We've been farming now for 4 years. We have 240,000 birds in 6 sheds on our farm. Chicken farming is great. We really enjoy the work that we do, caring for the chickens. They're a great livestock to have, and we're really proud of raising chickens for the community. At the beginning of the batch, our chickens are hatched, and on that same day they arrive on a truck from the hatchery. But before that, we've had to make sure that we've prepared the sheds ready for the chickens to arrive to a nice clean environment. So some of the things that we have to do at the completion of the previous batch is to disinfect and clean the sheds to make sure that there's no germs and bacteria left in the sheds from the previous flock, just so that our new chicks get a really good start. Some of the jobs that we need to do right at the beginning of preparing the sheds for a new batch is to go around, make sure all of our fans and ventilation equipment are all in good working condition, and it's an opportunity to do any routine maintenance. Following that, we'll then start setting up the sheds, and that means bringing in new wood shavings that create the bedding for the new chicks.
We call it litter. It serves a few purposes. It's absorbency, it's a good insulator for the birds to maintain the heat, and they enjoy dust bathing and that sort of stuff in it.
We make sure that we've got fresh starter, which is a bit smaller for new chicks, comes in fresh straight from the mill, and we also flush the water lines so that everything they've got is fresh. And then we turn the heaters on and make sure that the whole shed, including the floor, is at the optimum temperature. So we use temperature monitoring systems to make sure that we're achieving an even spread across the sheds.
When the truck arrives, we bring them straight in down to the far end of the brood, and then we just start setting the crates out and place them as quick as we can, get them onto the feed and water. We lower the feeders and drinkers down to just above ground level so that the chicks can very quickly find food and water. And it's amazing, once you've placed and we've moved down the shed for the next placement, the chicks have found the feed, they're hitting the drinker nipples, they love that stainless steel colour. Yeah, they're pretty smart. In the first 24 hours, we're coming into the sheds to check the chickens every couple of hours. We'll do a crop check, and that's just checking to make sure that we can feel that they've ingested some food and water. When we first walk into a shed, we're coming in to do our husbandry checks. So we're looking at the chickens, looking at their behaviour. Are they comfortable? So is the temperature okay? Their behaviour tells us if the temperature isn't right or there's patches of hot and cold in the shed. So nice even spread. Yes, yeah. Not clumped together or sitting against the edge of the shed. And then that gives us warning as do we need to change some aspect of how the shed's operating. Some of the other things that we do is just walk through and see if any have died. There is a level of mortality in the chickens, so we're just walking through and we'll remove them from the sheds. We record all of the information that we observe, as well as some of the physical things that are going on, like the temperature within the sheds. We've got a generator that runs the whole farm. It's big enough to run all 6 sheds on the hottest day with all the fans going. We can monitor the conditions inside the shed remotely from home. Alarms that are monitored 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. And we know straight away if there's anything wrong. On our daily checks, when we come into the sheds, we are looking to make sure that the feeder and drinker lines are at the right height. So we'll be adjusting them probably every day as the birds grow, just lifting them up a little bit more. We're also looking to make sure that the water pressure in the drinker lines is adequate for them and that the feed quality in the pans is good. The other thing that we'll do is also make sure that the litter condition is still dry and friable to get all of those good qualities that we want. During the warmer times of the year, we have sensors down the length of the sheds monitored by our computer, and it's just gives us an indication when we should start using our cooling. After we've done our inside checks, we do our outside checks. That includes checking bait stations. We like to maintain all the ranges. It really helps us control rodents or birds coming in around the sheds. It helps us control disease. Biosecurity is a big deal for any poultry farm to protect the health and welfare of our chickens. We need to make sure that we don't introduce any diseases or influences from the outside.
Now that the chickens are bigger, they have more feathers on their body, and the temperature inside the sheds is cooler because they're able to regulate their temperature easily with their adult feathers.
Once our chickens get older and have a good feather coverage, ours have the opportunity to go outside as free-range birds. We normally open those pop-outs early in the morning once the temperature comes up a bit, so it's nice and comfortable for them. Our chickens have access to the range during daylight hours, and the amount of time they can spend out there is dependent on the weather conditions.
The health and well-being of the chickens is our main focus on the farm. The company rep visits the farm regularly. They're looking at our chickens and their welfare, but they're also looking at our records as well to make sure that we're maintaining the right standards. They're available along with a company vet 24 hours a day if we have any questions or any issues that we need to liaise with them about. We have an external auditing program that occurs throughout the batch, and that's to make sure that we're maintaining a high standard of farming for our chickens.
Once our chickens reach the right size for market, we have the birds taken off feed for a period of time. Once they've been lifted up, we've always got water there for the birds to drink, and that stays down right until the catches are ready to go in. Before the catches arrive, we do a walk through the shed just to make sure that all the chickens are fit for travel. Once the catches arrive, I have a chat with the supervisor and basically just hand the control of the shed to him. They then go in, catch all the chickens, they transport them to the processing plant for slaughter.
Once all the chickens have been collected, we go in and we clean out all of the used litter. We wash down all of the sheds and then fumigate to make sure that any diseases have been eradicated, so that we've got a really clean start for the next batch of chickens that come in. Life of a chicken farmer is busy whether or not we have chickens on the farm. There's always something to do.
But we really enjoy it. We love what we do and happy to supply a good product for Australian consumers.
Okay, so what happens with the removed used litter? Very good question. So that normally can go for composting, and then that will be spread on crops, or it will get further processed into fertilizer. Do they change the litter? No, they do not change the litter. So litter management is a fine art in that you have to put just enough in the shed so that it's not going to get damp over the period of time that the chickens are in there. And then obviously if you have disease and the chickens have extra wet droppings, then that's when you can run into trouble. So no, generally they don't replace the litter while it's in there. If it did get wet, it's a bit of a tricky one, because if you put new litter on top, that new litter just gets wet. So as I said, it's a bit of a fine art knowing how much to put in there. So one important point I need to make with that video is that those guys were contract growers, which is a pretty common concept in the broiler industry, and also with pigs as well. So how we talked about the broiler industry, a lot of it is vertically integrated. We've got these big companies that own all stages of production. So those guys would own the facilities and the shed and the land, obviously, but they wouldn't own the chickens, and the company that they're growing for would also pay for the feed, any medications, the veterinarian that comes out and helps as well. So it's a bit of a unique setup, I guess, in that they don't specifically own the chickens. They just get given a certain number, and then they get paid for how much they're able to send to market. So I guess after having watched that video, what I'd like to do now is a session on the whiteboard, just discussing biosecurity. Yes, so you're not going to get a vet out for a sick chicken just because of the monetary value of that chicken. So normally they will euthanize any injured or sick chickens or any individuals. Obviously, if the problem seems to be affecting the flock, that's when they'll get the veterinarian out, and that's when they'll do treatment. So treatments are never usually done to an individual. It's always done to the flock, either through drinking water or the feed. Okay, so in terms of biosecurity, perhaps someone could offer a definition in the chat for us. What is biosecurity and why is it so important on an intensive industry farm such as a chicken farm or a pig farm? Yes, limiting the prevalence of disease. Yeah. That measures that are taken to reduce spread of disease. Yep, absolutely. So it's the measures that are taken, I guess, to prevent or control the introduction of pathogens onto the farm. It's so important in, I mean, it's obviously important in all livestock industries, but so important in poultry and pigs because of the way those animals are housed. So often they're indoors, which means that you can keep them naive to a lot of diseases, but at the same time, if something gets introduced, then it's going to spread through everyone really quickly because you do have a naive population. And you do have the ability to control things a lot more when you're housing animals indoors versus outside. So what we're going to do when we talk about biosecurity, we often think about it in terms of the risks coming in and the risks going out on a farm. So I'd like to spend maybe the next 10 minutes or so, to see how long it takes, identifying the ins and the outs for the farm that you just saw, which is pretty much like every broiler farm. So would anyone like to, maybe I'll start with an in just so you guys can sort of understand where I'm coming from. So obviously something that comes into the farm is the litter, and you don't want that coming from a source where they perhaps grow chickens there and could potentially, no, you're not allowed to write on the whiteboard. Maybe if you could write it in your chat. In the chat would be great. Feed, thank you, Lacey. Feed, yeah, water, the chicks themselves. Staff, good. People say staff. Oh, I've lost my opportunity. I'll say other visitors. I'll just scroll through. Water, yeah. Medications, vehicles, good one.
Hello there.
Yeah.
Just to interrupt, I had a look at the settings, and can one of the students try again to write on the whiteboard? If someone tries something? You can now? Yeah, okay, awesome.
Foreign pet, yep, good. Yes, pests is a good one. Wood shavings, yep, that's the litter. I guess in terms of, yes, we've got foreign pests there, but what would be the biggest biosecurity threat, especially if we have free-range birds? Parasites, rodents, yeah, pathogens. Well, I guess our purpose is to keep the pathogens. The birds, yes, well done. So wild birds are a big threat. Wild water birds, yep, Very good. Okay. So, and then in terms of our, let's just make sure we've got everything that I sort of thought of. The only other thing would be the wind or aerosols for our inns, because you can get pathogens being carried in the wind as well. Okay, in terms of our outs, dirty shavings, yes, absolutely. So as we said, they get composted and spread on crops or further processed for fertilizer. Yep, people coming out, vehicles coming out, dead chickens coming out. So you obviously have to be very careful with the disposal of your dead chickens. The vehicle that picks up the chickens to go to the processing plant is a major biosecurity risk, because that's obviously going to the processing plant, which is where all the chickens in the state are going. So that's just a mixing bowl of disease there. In terms of the biggest complete clean of dirt and pathogens, and yeah, so the equipment, yeah, the well, even the vehicle that comes in to clean all the litter out, unused feed. And if we think about a vehicle, what part of the vehicle do you think is the biggest threat in terms of where do you think there's most potential? Tires, wheels? Yeah. Interesting you say that. Because the wheels actually get hot when they're driving on the road, you're going to kill a lot of pathogens that way. The only thing you'll probably struggle to kill is worm eggs, because they're so sticky. Yes, inside the vehicle, whoever wrote that is spot on. So it's the footwell of the driver is where you're most likely to get your disease. Because that driver's getting in and out potentially at different farms. So really important that they either clean out the footwell and change their footwear when they arrive at a new farm. Yeah. Okay, just to go back to our inns, in terms of things that we can do to try and combat that, I'm not sure if you guys can see my mouse moving. Can you? No, okay. I'll just say it then. In terms of our wild birds, obviously farms will put up netting to try and stop wild birds coming in. Another thing that happens is that the government actually goes out and samples wild birds around farms to see what diseases they're carrying. So we know the amount of risk that is there. In terms of staff, what about the droppings? No, the nettings does not stop the droppings, and that's one of the biggest risks, because they're most likely going to carry salmonella. Potentially avian influenza, that's another really big risk as well. Potentially spotty liver as well, which we'll talk about in the next video. Now, staff, often it's not uncommon for staff to shower into a poultry farm, so wash their hair and then change into the farm's clothing. Also, they're not allowed to go to any other poultry farms, and they normally have to have a few days rest in between farms. If they go overseas, they usually have to quarantine for 7 to 14 days. Do staff shower or disinfect in between different barns? No, that's a good question. So yeah, on the farm, there's obviously multiple sheds. Some farms will have it set up in that you have to change your overalls and your boots when you go into a different shed. Other farms don't have that set up. Otherwise, the poor staff would have very, very dry skin if they're showering in between sheds. In terms of water, that's often sanitized. The feed obviously has to come from a reputable source. The litter has to come from a reputable source. Wind, a bit easier to control if the birds are housed indoors. Free range, you've got a few more challenges. Rodents, you're obviously allowed to bait on farm. You obviously don't want to be putting your baits inside the shed because the chickens could potentially eat that. How is the water sanitized? So it's usually with chlorine dioxide and a filter. I think we've covered, and with the equipment, there's usually the opportunity to disinfectant, or for small equipment, they have little UV boxes that you can put things in to disinfect it as well. Okay, good job, guys. So hopefully that just got you thinking about biosecurity on a broiler farm. Oh, phones, yes, big one. Someone's using the pointer there. Yeah, phones is a big one. That would usually go in the UV box, I think. Okay, so in the interest of time, we're going to move on to our layer section of the workshop, if you like. So I have pre-recorded an interview with Rachel Wilson, who's an egg producer. Luckily, I was able to do it before the lockdown. So hopefully just have a listen, try and you can hear the opinion of a free range producer who produces very locally. She actually owns Fremantle, or not own, well, works for her family, owns Fremantle Egg Company. I was also going to say you can go and watch that video again, and there is another video on the website. So that is from the Australian Meat Chicken Federation, and that's a really good source of information for you guys if you want to find anything else out that's not been covered in the lectures or the workshop. Okay, so with that, I'm going to change over to the interview. Obviously, really embarrassing to watch yourself on camera, so but that's fine. Now I'll just share. Okay, here we go. Hello everyone, this is my interview with Rachel Wilson. Rachel is a free-range egg producer and she's also the Executive Officer for the Commercial Egg Producers Association in Western Australia. So firstly, thank you so much, Rachel, for volunteering your time to speak with me.
No problems.
I guess we'll start off by you telling us a little bit about your family's farm.
Sure. So we run a free-range egg farm. I'm fourth generation to be involved in the business. We have around 14,000 hens and we produce around 12,000 eggs a day. We supply to the box market and local cafes and a couple of distributors.
What does the box market mean?
So the box market is kind of the equivalent of that sort of middle market. Box is direct to the customers, so we can supply 1 box, 2 boxes. We're not sort of looking at having to supply in bulk. So your box market means we're just a little bit more flexible with who we supply to. So we don't supply to any of the major supermarkets. We just sort of fit in underneath.
Okay, we've got some images here of your farm. So you guys obviously have a shop out the front of your property where you can buy eggs.
Yeah, we're one of probably the few farms left that actually also still continue to sell direct to public. And we've been doing that for as long as we've been producing on the farm. So that's also just another little extra source of revenue for us, and just also keeps us engaged with like the local community, and yeah.
Beautiful. So this is the conveyor belt that the eggs come from the shed.
Yep.
And then this is your sorting machine.
Yeah, so the way our sheds are designed is that we have to grade our eggs every day. So that's 7 days a week, every day of the year. We'll never have a day off. All our eggs are hand collected, packed and sorted here at the farm.
And here's some of your chickens. Sorry, I'll go back to that one.
Yeah, so we have 2 sheds on site. The shed you're looking at there is our largest shed. So that one will have around about 10,000 birds in there. So our internal stocking densities run at about 8 birds per square metre. So plenty of room for them when they're inside. Our feeders run on chain feeders, and then our birds have all the water nipple lines running through to get their water.
Great, and I think we've got some video footage of the birds given the option to go out in straight line.
Yeah, yep. So we have different sort of areas where the birds can climb the perches. They're able to then go through the pot holes. So the birds need to have a minimum 8 hours a day of being able to go outside. So our birds well and truly have plenty of time. But that image there or video there is taken probably in the middle of the afternoon, and pretty clear to see that a lot of birds, when they have the choice, also do choose to stay inside where their feed and water's nice and close.
And then this is the feed line.
Yeah.
Great, and then some birds outside.
Yes. So we've got there a day where perfect weather. So a few of them have popped out.
And then just a few more photos. So could you tell me what a normal day on the farm would be like for you or the people that work for you guys?
Sure. So firstly, what we do is we will go through each of our sheds. So that involves a walkthrough. That's checking your feed lines, your water lines, checking the birds, so listening out to hear if you hear anything that sounds different to what you would normally hear, or opposite to that is the shed very quiet. You know, usually that means there could be signs of something wrong. Mm-hmm. You're checking your nest boxes and also picking up any sort of floor eggs that might be in the shed. So first things first, check the birds. Secondly, what we'll do is we'll then organise all our grading and packing. Mm-hmm. A normal morning, that might be sort of 2 to 3 hours. While we're doing that, we also are then going back probably every couple of hours, doing another shed walkthrough, making sure the feeders are working, waters, lines are working. And then usually by the afternoon, it's just sort of getting prepared for the next day and things like that.
Okay. And with regard to the floor eggs, do they get graded or treated any differently to eggs that would come from the nest boxes?
Yeah, unfortunately, the floor eggs have to be separated because if they are very dirty, then those eggs will go into pulp, which is waste. Mm-hmm. So in an ideal situation, what you want to be trying to do is limit your floor eggs as much as possible. But a lot of that comes through flock management, how you handle the birds when they first come in, and making sure that you've got space in the shed and clear entry for the birds to get into the nest boxes to lay their eggs.
Yeah. So I guess that kind of leads on to maybe you can talk to us about some production issues you guys have had over the years, and do you think they would have been any different if you guys were a cage or a barn production system?
So I grew up on the farm. When I was growing up here, it was a caged farm. A lot of the production issues we had when we were caged, to be honest, were almost really nil. Since we have gone free range now, we've come across a range of different issues. They vary from having flocks where we have a large amount of floor eggs, so that can come from perhaps the rearing side of it. Yeah. We have issues with smothering. We're always trying to think of new ways of when we're first putting the birds in. They can be quite flighty when they first come from the hatchery and get put into our sheds. So you need to be careful about the way that you're putting them in. We also have issues with disease. Probably one of the ones now that's most prevalent for us is spotty liver disease. And that is one that would ultimately probably lead to the most sort of mortalities that we have on farm is when we have an outbreak of spotty liver. Doesn't happen with every flock, but for spotty liver to be there, there just needs to be a very small stress on the bird, whether it be maybe the chain feeder not working, water lines not working, a sudden increase in heat, a few days of really humid weather, or when the birds are coming into sort of peak production, any sort of small stress, and we seem to find that the birds just come down with spotty liver. So yeah, that can be one where we can have instances where we can lose quite a few birds in a matter of a few days.
As an egg producer, what do you wish that consumers understood better about the egg industry?
I think perhaps it would be to have people maybe a little bit better educated on the different systems. You know, we do have cage, we have barn, and we have free range. And while free range in an ideal world does sound like it is the best for the birds, well, for someone who does farm free range, we can sort of speak and say that it is much more difficult to produce eggs on a free range farm. There are a lot more factors that are out of our control, and a lot of that does come down to trying, you know, welfare of the birds and trying to mitigate risks in comparison to cage production. You know, unfortunately, the stigma of cage production hasn't really changed, and people seem to believe that you know, the birds are in these cages that are a medieval sort of thing, which just isn't the case. You know, when you look at mortality rates from cage to free range are significantly higher. Obviously, in saying that, the question might be then, why did we go free range? But that's sort of more just down to, you know, when you see trends and you see which way things are moving. Obviously, there was a point where we kind of then made the decision to go to free range. But I think it's just trying to have people to really sort of keep their mind open to all the systems, and just sort of making sure that they educate themselves properly, you know, look into it, look at all the research, reach out to farmers, you know, if you want more questions, sort of thing. Most farmers are pretty open and will talk to people if they have questions.
So I guess with that in mind, what would be your definition of good animal welfare on farm?
If I'm looking at it from our perspective of our birds, welfare is your most important thing. Welfare, or good welfare for us, is making sure your birds are fed, watered, sheltered. You know, we want them laying at their peak production. You're not going to sort of actively try to mistreat your animals, because, you know, the hens then, they're not going to lay their eggs, they're really going to suffer, and then also in a way that means that we will suffer as a business. So I think it's just making sure that, your hens are comfortable. We're always trying to make sure that whatever we can do, the comfort of the birds always comes first. You know, we're here every day of the week, regardless of the weather, regardless of what we have on, they're always the main priority. And good welfare should mean your animals should be your main priority, and just making sure they've got all the basic needs that they need to, you know, live a good life.
You're a young person in the industry. You advocate very well for the industry. Where do you see the industry going in the next 10, 20 years, and do you think your job is going to change in that amount of time?
I think it's an interesting question, because, I think industry in itself, in the years that I've been involved, has already begun to change quite a lot. And I think I've seen sort of the mood shift as well from consumers to farmers. And what I see is farmers trying to adapt to those changes, or that consumers want, which is moving towards free range. So where I see in the next 10 years is this continual growth of free range. But I hope that, you know, let's all hope, fingers crossed, that we don't have some sort of disease outbreak or avian influenza or something like that. And when we've got all our chickens outside and in free range paddocks, we're going to be in a little bit of trouble.
Yes.
But that's probably a bit more of a slightly gloomier perspective.
But important to consider in terms of risk management.
Yes, definitely. And that's something that a lot of farms are continuing to try to do. Biosecurity is one of our main things. You know, welfare of the birds is important, but biosecurity on farm is just as important. So a lot of farms are always trying to continually improve, work on new things. There's such high standards of biosecurity on farm nowadays. So yeah, I think it'll be interesting the next 10 to 20 years. And I just hope that consumers can continue to support farmers while they're trying to make these changes to adapt and sort of, you know, supply the eggs that consumers want. But I hope people understand that it's sort of not as simple.
Flicking the switch, changing the production system overnight.
Yeah.
This interview is for the benefit of second year animal science students. So these guys are interested in animal production, agriculture. What would you say the skills are that the industry needs at the moment? And if one of these guys was interested in getting involved in the egg industry, what would your advice be to them?
I think definitely we need as much involvement from people with animal science backgrounds, because as I mentioned, as we make this move to free range, we're just having these new diseases arise and these new challenges that farmers haven't faced before. So while farmers are great on ground and can tell you lots of things, there are certain things that we just aren't going to be able to understand. So, you know, if any of the students are interested in the poultry industry, I would highly recommend it as an industry to learn more about, engage with farmers. You know, there's work opportunities there. And, you know, it is a good industry to be in. It's a growing industry. More and more Australians every day are eating eggs. The industry is not getting any smaller. So, you know, the more involvement that we can have, the better, I think.
Great. Well, with that, I'll say thank you very much, Rachel, for your time.
No worries.
And I'll be sure to give the students your contact details as well. Please don't have any questions.
Okay. Yes, it is true. Only one egg a day. Yes, so spotty liver is caused by a bacteria called Campylobacter hepaticus. People kind of forgot about it. It's been around for 60 years, but everyone kind of forgot about it when the birds were mostly inside. But it's obviously emerged now that more farms are free range. So not a whole lot is known about it in terms of what causes it. And it is carried in the gastrointestinal tract of the chickens, but in terms of specifically what conditions cause an outbreak, still doing research. I'm very conscious of the time. What happens to when their egg production decreases. So around 72, 78 weeks of age usually is when their egg production decreases, and then that's when they will usually finish that shed. So the shed will get depopulated and those chickens will usually go to the processing plant and be used for human products or potentially pet products as well. Okay, in terms of the multi-choice practice questions in the prac notes, we don't have time to go through them, but the answers are B, 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 C. Obviously, with me, when in doubt, select B. But with that, I hope you found the videos interesting. Obviously, if you have more questions, feel free to send me an email. And if you would like Rachel's contact details because you are genuinely interested in the poultry industry, then that would certainly reach out to me, and I can do that. Okay, thank you guys. I'm glad you found it interesting. Thanks everyone. Being a bacterium, can the flock be treated? Yes, so luckily it does respond to an antibiotic that doesn't have a withholding period for eggs, so at the moment, but you know, with resistance and that, who knows. Okay, thank you.